Welcome back to Algebra 2 class. Today we are starting something new. Goodbye to systems of equations. Thankfully, we're starting the last thing that you're going to learn, which would be quadratic equations, and the first way to solve them is by graphing. We will learn several ways, ending, I believe, with the quadratic formula, which is the main thing that you need to know. Today's will be by graphing. It's a fairly simple process here. It's just with graphing, it's easy work, but hard to do because you got to make graphs and stuff. So most people don't use this method, but it's the first one that we usually learn. If you don't have graph paper, do your best to make your lines because you're going to want use line paper and a ruler and do your best to make them. We'll see what happens. But so I have two problems. This is on page 219 if you're with my class. This is on page 219, and they're going to give you equations, and you're going to graph these equations, and then we're going to tell what the answers are about where they cross the x-axis, which is this, so wherever they touch this line, or if they have imaginary roots, which means that the U-shaped graph would be above this and is not going to touch this, okay? So the only two notes I wrote down were the above the x-axis equals imaginary roots. That means you're not going to get an answer. And then the equation. So the quadratic equation is actually ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are numbers, okay? And today we're going to set y equal to that because you need an x and y to graph. So when we look at this first problem, we want x squared, x, and the number all on one side. They're on one side. And we want them in the correct order where it goes x squared, x, and then the number. So they're already in place. So all we're going to do is set y equal to x squared plus x minus 2. Then we're going to make a table. Okay, just like when we graphed slope and stuff, we're going to make a table. We're going to pick a number for x, solve for y, which is going to give us our points on our graph to plot so that we can get our shape to see what's going on. With this, when we graphed lines, we always use 3 points. You got your end points, and then you want a point in the middle to make sure you're right. With this one, you're going to need 4 or 5 points because you're going to need dots on this side and this side, so you need some positive and some negatives. So I would say 4 to 5, probably 5 points on there, and you're basically going to fill in for x and then find y. So for instance, real quick, if I said x is 0, because that's the easy one to pick right here, well, 0 squared is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, so y would be negative 2, all right? If I said x is 1, then I would get 1 squared plus 1 minus 2. 1 squared is 1, plus 1 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So I had picked 1, and this is 0. All right? Let me pick a negative value in there. Again, you can pick whatever you want for your graph. So let's do negative 1. If x is negative 1, then negative 1 squared is a positive 1. Positive 1 plus a negative 1 is nothing, so this would be negative 2. And then let's do one more since I have a negative and I have some similar positives here. Let's pick another negative. So if I went negative 2, negative 2 squared is a positive 4. If this one was negative 2, then that would be plus a negative 2 or minus 2. So 4 minus 2 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So if I pick negative 2, I have 0. So I have 4 points here. I'm going to plot them. By now, if you're in Algebra 2, you should know how to plot points, okay? The x is always first. It goes right or left. And then the y is up and down. Positive up here, negative up here. So my first point, I'm going to plot these in red so that you can see them. will be 0, -2, which means I don't move right or left any, and I put my first dot on -2. Okay, I know this is written kind of small, but I needed the space and I didn't want the numbers to get in the way of the graph. 1, 0 is my next one, which I always start in the middle here. I go over 1 and I don't move any. Okay, then I have -1, 2. -1 goes this way, and that's a -2. Is that right? -1. That would be a +1. Yeah, that's right. So I go over -1 and I go down -2. Oh, 2 is over here. I don't know what I'm doing here. -1, 2. I feel like that's not right. And then I got 2, 0. So even if I don't have that, I have the shape that I need, even if that's wrong. Then you're going to make a U-shape, kind of a U-shaped graph, like that. I believe that's called a parabola. And you basically need, to answer this question, you want to know where it touches this line. So if I look right here, it touched on 1. And it also touched on -2. So those are my two answers, where it crosses there. I guess the point I'm making when you make your lines, and I feel like that one's wrong, I'll have to relook, but when you make your dots, you need the pivot point to where you know that you're going up, because I could have lines going all the way down until I get there. So make sure you have some on both sides and some place where to connect them, I guess. So let's try to smooth this out and look at number 5. All right, number 5, I have my x squared, my x, and my number term. So that means that I don't need to rearrange anything. If they're not in order, you must put them in that order. So I'm going to use a black marker. And I'm going to say y equals x squared plus 5x plus 14. Now, because of that plus 14, that's why my numbers are so small as well, because this is going to get into the higher numbers. I'm going to make my x and my y. And this time, let's go with x is 1. If x is 1, 1 squared would be 1. 5 times 1 is 5. So I would get 1 plus 5, which is 6, plus 14. So that's 20. All right, let's pick another positive. We'll try 2 positives and 2 negatives and see where we're at there. And then maybe a 0, because that gives us kind of a middle point, I guess. So, so then that would be 5. So let's go ahead and pick 2. So 2 squared is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. So that's 14 plus this 14. That would be 28, which is going to be off of my graph here. Let's do 0. 0 here gives me 0, and a 0 here gives me 0, so that's going to give me 14. Those are all positive, so they're going to be on this side somewhere. Okay? Now, if I pick -1, and I put a -1 here, -1 squared plus 5 times -1 plus 14. Alright, so that's a 1 minus 5 plus 14. Well, 1 minus 5 would be -4. -4 plus 14 would be 10. So that was with a -1. And now we'll do a -2. And this will be the 5 points that I'm trying to make. And I'll throw my book on the floor. So -2 squared is 4 plus 5 times -2, which would be -10. Plus 14. So 4 minus 10 is -6, and -6 plus 14 would be 8. Okay, so here's my 5 points. So now I'm going to plot those in blue so that the red won't throw you off. And my first one is 120, which means I go over 1 and I go up to 20, which is about right there. My next one is 228, so I go over to 2, and 28 is going to be somewhere about here. It's off my graph. Alright, my next one is 0, 14, so I don't move any and I come up to 14. Alright, my next one is negative 110, which means I go over here and I come up to 10. And then my next one is negative 2, 8. So I go negative 2 and I come up here and I'm at 8. Alright. It looks like I only still have half of my graph. I still don't have where I'm coming back up. So I need to pick a number over here to see if it's going to come back up. So I have negative 3, negative 4. I'm going to pick negative 4 since it's out here a little bit to make my graph come back up. So we're going to add one more in here. Let's try negative 4 to see if we come back up so that I can see where my turning point is here. Because right now I just kind of got a slanted line. So if this was negative 4, if x was negative 4, then I would have negative 4 squared plus 5 times negative 4 plus 14. So that would be 16 minus 20, 5 times negative 4 plus 14. 16 minus 20 is negative 4, right? Negative 4 plus 14 would be a positive 10. So negative 4 and 10. So if I come over here, negative 4, and then I come up to 10, now I can see that I'm going back up. Okay? We see I don't have it kind of looks like a check mark. Not a full U, but it's going back up. And those are the dots that we need. So if your line's just going one way, you need to get something over that way. So now that I look, this is nowhere near X. This is the pivot point where it started turning back up. There's nothing right here that's going to go any lower. That means this answer is imaginary roots. There's not a number that's going to make that statement true. So we write imaginary roots for that answer. Okay, do not write that on all of them. I still need to see the graph so that I know that that's the truth. So you're either going to get where they cross, or you're going to get imaginary roots if it doesn't cross. Okay, now it could look like this, and you still have to put that whatever point it is that it crosses that. Okay, it does not have to go below it. Okay, but if it is above it and it's not going to touch the X, then it's imaginary. I will tell you from I don't know how many I assigned to you, but 1 through 10, there are only 4 imaginary roots, and this is 1. So don't write that for all of your answers. Do your best. Have a good rest of your day, and God bless.